Hello and welcome back to Bluehat Cybersec Academy. In this lesson, I am going to explain the following topics. First, common security policies. Then, a deeper dive into common security policies. And lastly, we will discuss supporting security policies with procedures. These topics are part of Domain 5, Security Operations Concepts in the Certified in Cybersecurity, or CC, exam, and are useful for both exam preparation and building a strong cybersecurity foundation. So, let's begin. All policies must support any regulatory and contractual obligations of the organization. Sometimes it can be challenging to ensure that a policy encompasses all requirements while remaining simple enough for users to understand. Now, let's move on to 6 common security-related policies that exist in most organizations. Number 1, Data Handling Policy. This policy defines whether data is for internal company use, restricted to certain roles, or available to the public outside the organization. In addition, some data has associated legal usage definitions. The organization's policy should clearly spell out any such restrictions or reference applicable legal definitions as required. Proper data classification helps organizations comply with relevant laws and regulations. For example, classifying credit card data as confidential supports compliance with the PCI DSS. One requirement of this standard is the encryption of credit card information. When data owners correctly define encryption requirements within the organization's data classification policy, they ensure that the data is encrypted according to the specifications outlined in the standard. Next, password policy. Every organization should have a password policy in place that defines expectations for both systems and users. This policy should describe senior leadership's commitment to secure access to data, outline any standards selected for password creation, and identify who is responsible for enforcing and validating the policy. Next, we'll look at acceptable use policies. The Acceptable Use Policy, or AUP, defines acceptable usage of the organization's network and computer systems and helps protect the organization from legal action. It should detail approved and appropriate use of organizational assets, including the IT environment, devices, and data. Each employee, or anyone with access to organizational assets, should be required to sign a copy of the AUP, preferably in the presence of another employee. Both parties should retain a copy of the signed agreement. Policy aspects commonly included in acceptable use policies include data access, system access, data disclosure, passwords, data retention, internet usage, and company device usage. Next, bring your own device policy. An organization may allow employees to acquire equipment of their choosing and use personally owned devices for business purposes, commonly referred to as bring your own device, or BYOD. Another approach is to provide employees with a list of approved equipment and require them to select from trusted options. Allowing employees to choose devices they are comfortable with can improve morale, but it introduces additional challenges for security professionals. These challenges include reduced standardization and privacy concerns. When devices are used for both personal and business purposes, issues can arise during forensic investigations or audits. It can also be difficult to ensure that devices are securely configured and free of backdoors or vulnerabilities that could expose organizational systems or data. All employees must read and agree to the BYOD policy before being granted access to systems, networks, or data. As the workforce grows, BYOD-related challenges also increase. Organizations must deploy appropriate tools to manage device security, establish clear user expectations, and define appropriate business rules. Next is privacy policy. Personnel often have access to personally identifiable information, or PII, also known as Electronic Protected Health Information, or ePHI, in the healthcare industry. It is critical that organizations document employee understanding of policies and procedures for handling this information and ensure awareness of legal repercussions for improper protection. Privacy policy documentation is similar to an acceptable use policy, but focuses specifically on privacy-related data. The policy should define what constitutes PII or ePHI, appropriate handling procedures, enforcement mechanisms, disciplinary actions for noncompliance, and references to applicable regulations and legislation. These regulations may include international laws, such as the GDPR in the European Union, national laws like PCI DSS in Canada, industry-specific laws such as HIPAA and the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, or GLBA, in the United States, or local laws where the organization operates. Organizations should also maintain a public-facing privacy document, explaining how private information is used internally and externally. For example, healthcare providers may be required to inform patients how their data is protected or where they can find this information, such as on the provider's website. Finally, change management policy. Change management is the discipline of transitioning from a current state to a future state. It consists of 3 major activities: deciding to change, implementing the change, and confirming that the change has been correctly completed. Change management focuses on decision-making and approvals that authorize system support teams, developers, and end users to implement approved changes. Throughout the system lifecycle, changes to systems, components, and operating environments can introduce new vulnerabilities and potentially weaken enterprise security. A structured change management process ensures that necessary changes are implemented without adversely affecting business operations. Now let's take a deeper look at how these policies function within an organization. Policies are established based on the organization's needs, vision, and mission. Each policy should clearly define penalties or consequences for noncompliance. Initial violations may result in warnings, while repeated offenses could lead to suspension, unpaid leave, or even termination in the case of critical violations. These expectations should be clearly communicated during onboarding, particularly for information security personnel. It must be clearly stated who is responsible for enforcing policies, and employees must sign off, acknowledging their understanding and agreement. This process may include surveys or quizzes to confirm that employees fully understand policy requirements. These policies form part of the baseline security posture of any organization, and all security or data handling procedures should be supported by appropriate policies. Finally, let's discuss how security policies are supported through procedures. Different organizations have different goals for their acceptable use policies. Some organizations encourage personal use of IT assets to improve morale and reduce disruptions between work and personal life. Others allow employees to use organizational assets for personal education, benefiting both the employee and the organization through improved skills and satisfaction. In contrast, some organizations strictly limit personal use of IT assets to reduce risk. All security-related policies should align with the organization's risk tolerance while ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements. For example, organizations that do not store confidential data on laptops or workstations may adopt more relaxed acceptable use policies. However, healthcare facilities, research institutions, and defense contractors often enforce much stricter policies due to the sensitive nature of their data and the potential consequences of a data breach. That's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Keep the momentum going by checking out the next video in this series, and if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to Bluehat Cybersec Academy.